Personalizing student engagement is only possible when enrollment management and Marcom are aligned. At Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, Ryan Hogan's team uses Element 451 to improve student outcomes.
They love the AI functions where if they're coming up with an email campaign, they can ask it to help develop something, and then they go in and edit that. They also really enjoy the use of the landing pages for the campaigns that we build. So not only do we design emails and things, but we can also have landing pages that can give information to our students. And so it really brings the team together. So our enrollment staff is helping identify what the issue is, and then the marketing and communication staff can collaborate with them in Element to provide the solution for the problem we're trying to solve.
Aligned teams create better experiences for students. Visit element451.com to learn how an AI-first student engagement platform fuels a smarter, more connected campus experience. Hi, I'm a higher ed social media manager, and I have a confession. I have met so many amazing people through social media, and I'm excited to introduce you to my most recent social media connection turned real-life friend. Christina Lay is the head of marketing at Plot, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of creating social media campaigns. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager, a podcast that addresses the do's, don'ts, and dynamics of the digital ecosystem specific to higher education. I'm your host, Li Fowler. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education social media management and marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is a part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Christina, welcome to the podcast. I'm so delighted to have you here with us today.
I'm so glad to be here. And honestly, Jenny, when you asked me, I was like, this is the easiest yes of my life. Actually, please let me be on there because I've been such a big fan of yours for so long. So naturally, I was like, even if she's not going to ask me, I'm going to figure out a way to sneak on there.
Well, it would have made the ask easier. Well, even easier. I'm delighted that you're on. I've been, the admiration goes both ways. I've been following your work as well and just have been loving everything you post. So thank you for making time to be on here. So tell us, what's your origin story? How did you get started in social media?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think people who are earlier, I guess, social media managers happens to always stumble into the job. And I think that's not unique to me. I went to college to become a political communications person. I want to become a political speechwriter. That was my general interest. I really wanted to go out there and make a change, writing a lot of words so other people could take the words and say it themselves, and I don't reap the repercussions of it. That being said, though, I do think there is a level of soul selling that is involved in working in politics that I don't think I was quite cut out for. So I considered pivoting into other areas of communications. I got an internship as a legislative aide during my last year of college, and I thought I was going to do, some political work. But what ended up happening was my political work heavily involved in here's a phone, take some pictures, write stuff online, run Facebook accounts and everything like that, because I was the youngest person in the group. And they were like, she can handle social. And that experience ended up leading me to other opportunities in social media work. And yeah, the rest of it was pretty much history. But it's so funny because I didn't go to school. I didn't have the traditional marketing or social media background that people typically have. And I think even nowadays they have specific college courses that's dedicated to social media.
Yes.
And
yes.
like when I was in college, we did not have that.
Oh, no.
So it was
Not at all. I mean, people, it didn't exist really when I went to college. It probably existed when you went to college, but it did not exist when I went to college. So it's a new world. But like you, so we're actually, I'm excited about this because we're going to dive into really crafting social media campaigns. But like you, I think a lot of myself and a lot of the listeners, we don't have formal marketing background. So define social media campaign for us.
Okay. So and maybe this is coming from my political background, but if I were to define what a campaign is, I would say that it's a program of content used to sort of rile a crowd up for a very specific outcome. Because when you think of political campaigns or campaigning in general, you're trying to convince a group of people to either believe in the things that you're saying, buy the things that you're selling, or whatever it might be. But there's some motivational tactics behind it that I think requires uplifting and getting the excitement of a crowd. So I would call it like a program in a way.
I like it. And so a social media campaign would involve primarily social media platforms and channels.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes. Channels as the areas of broadcasting.
So when you're looking to start a new social media campaign and you're from scratch, right? What do you start thinking about?
I like to look at the entire skeleton, but the first thing I have to think about and always ask whoever initiated the campaign, whether it's myself or someone else, is what is the outcome that we're trying to drive here? Like, what is the end goal of this?
Right?
Yes. What is the goal of this? Because so many times we do things, especially when it comes to social, where it seems like there's really no sense of direction. So not having that understanding of the why behind we're doing what we're doing kind of leads us a little, I don't know, blind.
Totally. I mean, if we don't know why we're using social, then the audience won't know why we're doing it
and it
either,
makes it
right?
so painfully obvious.
I know.
It's so obvious because sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen like certain content that comes out and you're just like, what was the purpose of this?
Yes. I mean, you can tell it was posted. Yeah. No direction. Someone thought it was a cool idea, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah,
someone's like, this is gonna stick. You know what? I thought about it, and it's gonna make like a fart and come on the internet.
I like it. I like it. But again, so there needs to be a why, and so that's a great place to start. And
it's starting with the why. And then kind of taking a zoom out approach, right? So you understand the why. This is like your goal. This is the outcome that you want to bring. And then you start zooming out a bit. You're like, what are the specific parts is it going to take to build the momentum to get us to that why? Because you have to think of the entire, oh my gosh, I'm going to sound like such an old marketer if I say this, but you have to look at the roadmap in a way because you do have to kind of outline and organize your process. And I think the better that you start out with that skeleton, it creates a solid foundation for you to set, like you're better set for success that way versus saying, I have this great idea because this is what I want. Let's just do it. And it's like, whoa.
Right. Or my favorite, we need a hashtag. I'm like, why do we like, okay, like that's going to be the answer to, or essentially that's the campaign is a hashtag,
It's just a hashtag.
So I'm liking it. So, why, goal, process. So when you're saying skeleton, I think I get what you mean, but can you talk more about that? Like what skeleton are you creating or basing?
Yeah. So when I look at the skeleton, I think of all of the parts. And I use a lot of analogy to try to be very descriptive so people can envision what goes on in my head. I'm like that TikTok audio where people are like, I wonder what goes on in their head all day. But I think this is probably also, again, back to, being a writer and all these other things like this. It's kind of like your brainstorm in a way where you jot down all of the ideas, all the parts that you think will go into this process. And then you're like, okay, so I need I need to outline it and organize it in a way from start to finish. What is it gonna be involved in creating like what messaging are we trying to bring? Okay, when it comes to that messaging, how much money are we going to have to allot to this
Budget,
program? How many people and departments are going to be involved in this? How much creative work is it going to take to get in here? So there's like so many different layers, but you're not going to get there until you actually just have a moment to write it all out, messily draw it everywhere. And then the second step would then be to organize it into where it is. And then I think because I typically come from a team of one.
Yeah.
I like to be very methodical with this entire process. But I like to be methodical in a way of, I know I'm going to be a team of one. So if I'm going to get organized, now that I already have my to-do list, essentially, I need to figure out the game plan and the timeline. Because I think that's another thing people don't think about either carefully is like figuring out a timeline on the length of the campaign, how much time is allotted to each parts of the campaign, and then the aftermath of it. And so there's like so much thinking that I guess goes in. Now that you ask me that, which I haven't thought about in a long time, because sometimes I think we work in autopilot in a way. And when you've done enough of this, right, you just kind of like get through the motion. But when you actually have to take a step back and break it all down for, let's say if I was teaching a new social media coordinator how to do this, I was like, this would take maybe a week of planning, like at a minimum.
Yeah. So it does. So you're thinking about your audience, you're thinking about your budget, you're thinking about your timeline. And I love that you said that you can do this. Well, I don't love that you're a team of one, but I love that you said that because it's important to stress that we can do this within the resources that we have allotted to us.
Yes.
But budget probably, how big it is probably will determine a lot of what you do, right?
Yes.
And the audience also, once you figure out the audience, it probably determines a lot of, the content you create, correct? So like when you're doing this skeleton, it really helps answer a lot of the questions moving forward. That's what
exactly. Because you're also, you're doing the practical side of essentially forecasting and predicting what's going to happen. And you're essentially like, this is your hypothesis building in a way where you're like, these are the things that I'm going to need in order for this to be successful or get to whatever the outcome is that we want. And like, I think we have to take, I say we as in like the folks who work in social, who understands the platform, which is where the campaign is going to breathe life into. I think as the platform experts, we sort of have to take the reign in being the guide in that and like having more of a front seat conversation versus just being the executor in it as well. So there's some strategy behind it. Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of educating along the way. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Oh my gosh, girl. Social. I swear social is a constant work of education because that's all we do every day, whether we're educating up or we're educating out to external folks. Like we're constantly having to teach somebody something.
I agree with you. I have written that it's like a revolving door of answering the same questions over and over again. And you just have to embrace that, because that's part of the job. So I know that you actually, speaking of being a team of one, you had to get scrappy, like really scrappy recently for a campaign. Can you kind of talk about your experience and what it was and what it entailed?
Yes, actually. So I work at this company right now called Plot, and we are a small B2B startup. And when I say startup, I mean true, if you could imagine what a startup vibe is like in the basement somewhere, just a small group of people working ridiculously hard, staying long hours. That's what I'm in.
Wow.
But so Plot is a company that we're building the next gen social listening. And it's really, really cool. I would love to I hope eventually more people will learn about us and we grow into something spectacular. But Plot also, we're at our seed stage right now. So we are very new. There is, compared to the rest of the world, our company is pretty unknown in this space, right? Okay. And if we look at our current market share with other social media focused company like a Sprout Social or a Dash Hudson, we are very much at the bottom of the totem pole.
Okay.
So that being
So
said,
you are
I'm
just building it while
building it
while you're
we're
going.
flying.
Yeah, exactly.
Building it as we fly. And it does take a quite very specific type of energy to work in a startup, but I love it. I would highly recommend anybody who's in college right now, if they're listening, consider starting your own startup and all that other things. But I'm not going to get on the motivational train about that.
I like it.
But with Plot being so new and no one ever hearing our name, when we had, before we launched out publicly, we needed to figure out a way to sort of like get some signups for people to come and test our platform. And so we needed beta users, and we were doing a public launch essentially. And I remember being in the room with our CEO and our other co-founder, who's our CTO. And the three of us were just kind of like, how can we make the biggest splash online? And we had to really think strategically here, because at the time again, our seed money was about $3 million, but that had to be enough runway to pay for our current engineers and like all the other things that takes to build and run a company and all of our salaries and everything.
Wow.
So if you think that runway is very, very short, and the amount of money that you can allot to marketing programs is very, very slim as well.
Yeah, in the startup world, $3 billion is tight.
It's very tight. It's very tight. And when you're trying to build a video social listening tool that ingests a lot of data, it incurs quite a number of fees. But that being said, this is kind of like, I think when people think startup, they always think scrappy. Mm-hmm. And scrappy is also what I think when I think of lean social media teams. And in our case, because I have the luxury of working on, even though our team comprises of like 10 people, each of us have worked in social in some capacity. So there is that mutual respect for the job in itself. And so when we were launching, we're like, okay, what is the best way to make a splash? And then we were like, because the goal is we want to have a bunch of new users sign up. If we can get 100 beta users, that would be success for us. There, we listed the goal, right?
Okay.
And we're like, okay, so now we have the goal.
I love that. That's like a hard target too, like 100, right?
100,
okay.
Just 100. A brand that is a no name. We just launched our LinkedIn. We just have TikTok, Instagram. We just got our user handle. Quite literally, no one knows of us, right?
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, that's fine. Goal is 100. That would be a success for us. And then we backed out. We're like, where should we, what? I remember this conversation vividly. It was where, what, how, and how much. And I had to think okay, if we want 100 signups, how would that equate in terms of brand awareness for us as well? What is another subset goal that we could also have that's sort of more of a vanity metric for us? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, do you guys think we could maybe get 100,000 impressions, because that would mean 100,000 eyeballs? Could we get that volume of reach? And I was like, I've worked in social now at this point 10 years. I was like, I've worked it long enough to know that this is possibly doable. Mm-hmm. And so that was the second goal. Initial goal that was very much business outcome oriented is 100 beta users, right? Mm-hmm. The second goal that's more social media oriented is let's get 100,000 impressions.
I like it.
And then there were the other goals of let's try to get 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. And because we had to, before we started this campaign too, I remember we were being very strategic with where we could draw our focus as a B2B company. We're where can we grow the fastest and bring in the most business for a small company like ourselves? So out of all the channels, we're let's just focus on LinkedIn. That's where all the business folks are. That's where all the other social media managers are hanging out, who are running these big top brands. Let's just focus on LinkedIn.
Want to know what AI-powered, people-focused really looks like? The 2025 Engage Summit will show you how AI transforms engagement without losing the human touch. Join us June 24th and 25th in Charlotte for actionable insights, hands-on demos, and transformative strategies. Enrollify listeners will save $50 with code Enrollify50. Sign up at engage.element451.com.
And
Okay,
so
I just want to pause you there because I love this. So you said, what is the best social media platform for us in our minimal resources right now?
Yeah.
And you really strategically chose LinkedIn. You didn't say we need to get on X and YouTube, and I mean before even thinking about what you would post, right? Like because you probably didn't have the content anyway. You just said, "What?" Okay, I just wanted to stress that because I think that's so important, and I think that too many people want to be everywhere, and they're spreading themselves too thin, and the content is par.
The content lays flat. Exactly. Because you're just now. You're like diluting your attention and your resources because you're just, again, spreading yourself a little too hard.
And said you chose LinkedIn and you said the social media managers are also there and maybe they'll help.
Yes, they'll help amplify for us.
in their other channels, right?
Yes.
And so it does spread. Okay, I love that.
And the hope here too is like we also knew who our target customer, like our ideal customer profile, our ICPs, our social media managers. Mm-hmm. So we're like, where are we going to find them? Because if you think of Instagram, people are using it for their personal stuff, so you generally don't know who's actually a social media manager on there. You think TikTok and like the For You page is very up and down. You just don't really know what's happening. X is a dumpster fire, if we're being honest. So we were really going through and like talking about each of its platform and really trying to approach it from an objective standpoint and be like, listen, it's not going to make sense for us to be everywhere all at once until we have more money and more help.
But until then, here's
the golden opportunity for us because, and the co-founder, the CEO, Megan, and myself, we were both building our personal brand on LinkedIn as well. So we're sort of like platform experts in that sense. So we're like, we know this like the back of our hand. So back to the campaign. Yeah. And I remember I was like, okay, so if our goal is to get some user signups and to get eyeballs, I was like, we're going to need some help because our brand page has 600 followers. Right. Basically zero, right? Very, very small. And I was like, but our personal brands, I think at the time I had about 20,000 followers. Megan had about 8,000 followers. I was like, so between Meg and myself, we can probably pull some eyeballs here. And I was like, but what if we could run a bit of a creator campaign? And at the time, this was like last year, I remember seeing a little creator campaigns happening on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as large as what you would see on like Instagram or anything like that, right? Because B2B especially is like, you don't normally see a lot of creators going out there touting, software or anything of that sort. But I was like,
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I think we can experiment with this. And then I remember bringing it up, and they were like, you think they'll share for free? And I was like, absolutely not. And they're
yes, I think we should. Yes, we want to pay people, right?
We want to pay people. We don't want to pay people. But also, I remember being like, do you guys, what would be a budget that I could have to work with? And they were like, could you work with $1,000? And I was like, oh, and I was thinking at the time I had been approached for a partnership and somebody had asked me what my rates were and my minimum was $1,000. So I was like, oh, and then I remember the CEO basically challenged me. She was like, you got the voice of the community. You think you could work some magic here? And this is probably where you're just kind of like, oh my God, not the magician, the ninja, the rock star comes out. Right?
Oh no, yes.
And so I was just like, I'm gonna try. Let me just try. Because I'm just gonna
I love that.
I'm just gonna try. I cold DM about 20 creators, all with a following range from anyway. And I was mostly looking at people who had a very solid social media voice, and they were very much part of the community. They were either sharing memes, they were sharing their hot takes or their thought leadership around the state of social and everything.
So they had strong brands.
They had strong brands
aligned with what like Plot was trying to do.
With Plot's values and our mission and everything like that. So I handpicked 20 people who were also connected with me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna DM them. And my DM, I remember just being like, hi, so I just joined this company, and I was like very casual, and I was like, we're doing a beta launch very soon. would it be possible? We would love to be able to have some amplification behind this, and we'd love to work with you and partner with you, I think is what I said. Something very, very casual, not at all formal. And looking back, I probably should have used ChatGPT to help me formalize a more tight and concise message. But I was like, this is
authentic.
Yeah. So I wrote, and then almost everyone hit me back with, I would love to. How much budget do you have for this?
It's okay.
And I was like,
that's the natural second question.
Question. And I was like, well, I would, in previous companies, what I would always do is I would always state the budget ahead of time. And I'm like, here's the budget. Could you work within these numbers? But knowing that I only had $1,000, I was like, oh boy. So I had to pull my whole because we are in seed stage, I don't have a lot of money. I'm very, very sorry, but this is all I have. Would you do a post for $200? Boom, sent. And I remember thinking $200, if 5 people say yes, that's it with my budget, right?
Yes, that's the math.
That's the math.
Yes.
And I was like, that is done with my budget. And you know what was heartwarming, and I can't believe it ever happened, but the folks who were part of our initial creator public launch campaign, most of them did it for free. Ugh. They did it for free because one, they were
part of your community.
They're part of my community, but I also think they felt bad for me.
I mean, we've all been there, right? I think we've all been where no budget.
No budget,
or
none
small
whatsoever.
budget. And so we want to help each other out, right?
Yeah. And then we also offered an exchange as well, where it's I can't pay you much, but I could offer you a license to plot, and then you would get access for free and all these other things like that. And,
Great.
I would love to invite you into a cohort and really get your feedback so that way you could be, because if we're on a mission to build the ultimate social media tool for social media managers, we need that guidance from other social media folks. And I think they were driven by that message because they're finally a tech company that's not being built by tech bros, and it's actually being built by people.
You just said that, Christina. I love it.
I mean? But
yes, I
we
do.
think about they 100%. All come from a background from Silicon Valley, Stanford, and all these other things like that. And they're building tools for a job that they've never worked in. And that honestly helped facilitate a lot of our sales conversation in the future, where we knew that message is what stuck with people, especially social media managers who are often the most underappreciated, overworked group of people ever. And so it was almost a bit of a rally in a way where we're we are coming together and we're working towards this one specific goal.
So we can help other social media managers, right?
Yes.
There's this, there's a strong sense of community. You knew your audience. You knew, the messaging that resonated with your audience. Now, I know that's us and we know what we need, but I think there's an important lesson there. It's crucially important to understand what hits with your audience, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the part where, Plot has the luxury of knowing who our audience is, and we know them very well because we've been so embedded into that community ourselves. But I think even if I were to look at all the other times that I've worked at, a fuel company or a VoIP service or a leather goods company, each of those times I had to spend an extensive period just studying the behavior of the audience. And our buyers, who is our target here? And actually think, because, when I think about fuel, I also think these are commercial truck drivers. What do they care about? And I really, it takes a lot of time to do that. But,
good chicken at truck stops, right? Some of the best chicken I've had is at truck stops. Can I tell you this? So I feel like it's, yes. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but yes.
Actually, now I feel like we have to go on an adventure to a truck stop and get some chicken.
I can have it. Okay, so that was a huge segue that I admitted to that, but that's the audience, right? And so shall we talk about results, or was there more? Okay, so a lot of people have trouble connecting the dots between the content you put, and particularly social content, to bottom line or ROI, right? And can you tell us how you were able to do that?
Yeah. So with this campaign, it was planned to the T with everything, because I swear I'm a type A person where I didn't control the messaging of creators.
A lot of social media managers are,
yeah.
or just like detail oriented, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a much better way of saying it than type A.
No, we're very
I
detail
love it, the
oriented.
positive spin to it. It is true, though. We are very detail oriented. We have to be, because again, I think a organized chaos is a lot better than disorganized scramblings.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with you. Yeah.
So for this specific campaign, we already had the content prepared, which was just a launch video that we filmed in the basement of our office. Thank you to some partners in New York who had helped us put that piece together. But so we had one video. It was a very short 40-second video that all of the creator partners that we were working with could come together and share that all at once. And I remember I was like, okay, so I think out of 20, we ended up working with 12 creators, and we only paid 5 of them because the rest of them just wanted to do it for free.
Amazing.
We sent everybody amazing gifts afterwards. But to set the story up is that the plan is the co-founders were going to share it, and then all the employees, myself included, and then it was the investors, and then it was the creators. And one day, that video, and it was only on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I need to clarify. That was our only channel that we're sharing.
Yeah.
And everybody had their UTM links. Like, I didn't control what the creators wrote because I wanted them to write it from the heart. Now that because they've also spent some time. Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Yeah.
And they know their audience the best. They know what's going to get it to work, And I think like also having the setup of them being in our platform as well, experiencing and seeing the opportunity there, it helped them really shape their message and what they were saying, because they were really believing what they were saying, which, thank goodness. But so on that day, and I remember everybody had their own point of view of how this launch or what this launch meant for them. So again, our goal was to have 100 signups. That was the business goal. We ended up having nearly 1,000. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I thought we had a schedule link for a scheduled demo, and I thought it was going to break with the amount that was coming in at Slack, because it was just boom, 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 boom. It just kept going nonstop. And I felt in that moment what Mark Zuckerberg probably felt when he saw all the users. We were just like, are you shitting me? Oh. And not only that, we were riding that high of having nearly 1,000 people sign up for the beta program. To then, after about a week, I collected everyone's post results, and we had nearly 1 million impressions.
You blew your goals out of the water.
It was so, and I remember just saying, we don't have any budget. Can we work within this? And that actually helped facilitate.
You had like a goose egg of followers to start with, and no name recognition.
None whatsoever. But that message, and what was amazing was like they could have easily just shared the video and be done with it, but the message of this is the first time that a social media tool is being built by people who work in social, that got shared around so much. And that was the sticky thing that, I think triggered an emotional response from people. So I think that's when people felt I need to support the underdog. And so there was that storyline there that kept getting pushed. But we had nearly 1 million impressions, nearly 1,000 signups. And I just remember that had helped all the future conversations for partnership, like launches, and, when we want to experiment with some demand gen opportunities, like having a intimate plot dinner where we invited top social media folks in New York. We always measure the results, so that way I could use it to say, I need more budget so we could do cooler stuff.
Yes.
And so I think initially when we think of campaigns, we always have to think of, one, if you can't explain how the result impacts the business, because at the end of the day, if you're running social for a brand or any company, there's always a business component to it, and you have to be very revenue driven in a sense. Yeah. And I know that word makes our skin crawl, because I'm also allergic to thinking the numbers in that way as well. But, we have to scratch through that hive and just know that the more we practice this in the beginning, the easier it's going to be for us, and getting more resources and doing all the things that we want to do.
Yes, I agree totally, and I love this. And can I follow up with a question? So, have you been able to sort of gain like retain that momentum a little bit and continue to grow since then? Because sometimes I feel like you put, a fancy contest out there and you get like this spike of, followers or signups, but then because they just are looking for that, like to win that thing, then the interest goes drops, right?
Yeah.
But when you're building on community, because you're, of people, it might not be like the spike, but it's a steady increase.
Yes.
Have you found
It
that?
is. Yes, we have.
Okay,
And
okay.
honestly, like being very community led and community focused has honestly been our guiding North Star to how we're moving. Even it filters into how we build our product, because we generally like to keep a strong pulse on what's happening with the audience around and our community, right? Because again, if everyone's so touched by this topic that we're building this for social media teams, we have to live to that truth and still remain honest with the fact of like, is this actually helpful for you? And we have built specific cohorts of people. Like when we built our content calendar, there were a specific group of social media managers that were very like productivity driven, folks who came in and helped us structure that outline. Nothing that we've built has actually genuinely just been, this is a great idea that we had. It was always sort of backed up by community reassurance. And we also continue using that momentum of when people feel like they're involved in the mission or what you're building, they feel more open to sharing that message for you. So they become your natural brand advocates, and they're the ones amplifying for you, and you don't have to pay them. And I think companies, when they spend a lot of, because another thing that I'm very proud of at the stage that we're at right now, we have grown tremendously, especially with the enterprise deals and everything like that. I'm very proud of the work that we've done. We wouldn't have done that without, the help of our community and being where it is. But we have spent $0 in ads. Like the amount that we spend in those creator partnerships, that was it. And so to be able to say like we've never paid into, because we can't afford LinkedIn ads, if we're being honest.
A lot of higher ed can't either. Like there are a lot of us that can't. So I love it.
I think when you're strapped for resources in this way, which a lot of teams are, especially in the economy that we're in, where we can't drink from the kombucha on tap, So we just have to we just have to honestly figure out a way to like, I don't know, there's ways to build and grow. And this word gets overused a lot, but you can do it very authentically as long as you know who your people are, who's driving your business, and stay true to them. Because I think once you lose sight of that and you're just like, now I'm just doing things for the sake of like growing and scaling. Because we could do a lot of things that are probably very opportunistic for business growth and scalability.
It's a house of cards.
It is. It absolutely is.
It's a house of cards. So what would you, I love that you said kombucha, by the way. Apparently we're kombucha drinkers. So if someone's, listening to this and they're like, okay, I feel like I'm ready, I have the tools, what sort of added advice or what recommendations would you make to someone who is crafting that social media campaign for the first time?
I think you need to get the decision makers involved at the very beginning. Don't wait until the end where you have to paint the full picture for them. I think bringing them in, hearing their ideas will also help guide you in that strategic pathway, because you can have a gut instinct into what you want to build. But at the end of the day, if like you have folks on your team that might kind of be a bottleneck or might, where the buck kind of stops here a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to get them involved in the beginning and have that open floor conversation, because then everybody can kind of have an understanding of, hey, this is the layout of the land because we're all in this together, versus having social be a silo or an afterthought of just a distribution arm, because social is not a distribution arm anymore. And I need people to stop treating social teams like that.
Yes. Preach, Christina. I love it. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I hope that resonated. I know that resonated, actually. I should say I know that resonated. Okay, so before I let you go, I have to ask you one last question. Christina, what is your confession?
Okay, I was thinking about this question. I think my confession, and maybe this will ruffle some feathers, But I think people who are so specific about these hacks to grow on social medias are exactly that. They're just hacks. I don't think
I need to slow clap that. Yes, I
don't
agree.
think posting optimal times or anything like that, as much as these other social platforms tell you, like, here's the most optimal time for you to post to gain the most engagement. Worry about the content that you're sharing and making sure that message resonate. Because personally, even where I've done it for myself or I've done it for brands, all the times that I've been more thoughtful about the content I was sharing, it's worked tremendously. We have the algorithm that we got to fight against all the time. So why are you feeding into the algorithm by saying, if I post at 11:01 a.m., it is going to work so much better than posting at 3. I've posted content at 9 p.m. at night. And you know what? People didn't see it for 2 weeks later, and it still gained traction. So
there's a long tail.
Yes.
There's a longer tail if you keep the algorithm guessing sometimes. I don't.
Yeah. And I just think just focus on what you're doing, the message you're trying to bring out. And so there's that. Enough with the hack strategies. I'm so tired of it.
I agree wholeheartedly. Christina, I loved our conversation. Thank you so much for taking this time to be on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Confessions of a Higher Ed Social Media Manager is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Mallory Wilsey, and so many others of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.